All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Wherever you are, whatever you're doing, I'm delighted that you decided to spend a little time with me today. Well, today we have an amazing treat. Today we get to talk to Alan Weiss. He's one of those rare people who can say he's a consultant, a speaker, and an author, and he can really mean it. His consulting firm is Summit Consulting Group. It's attracted clients such as Merck, Hewlett-Packard, GE, Mercedes-Benz, State Street Corporation, Times Mirror Group, the Federal Reserve, on and on and on. Speaking typically includes 20 keynotes a year at major conferences. He's been a visiting faculty member at a variety of universities and is honestly one of the smartest people that I know. He's an inductee in the Professional Speaking Hall of Fame. He's published over 500 articles and, get this, 60 books, including his bestseller, $1 Million Consulting, now in his 25th year and 5th edition. But today we're going to talk about his latest and next book, the 4th edition of Getting Started in Consulting. And I'm just delighted that he's here today. Thank you, Alan, for making time for me.
Oh, it's my pleasure, Phil.
So cool. So getting started is something that a lot of people I know struggle with a lot. And you've been doing this a very, very long time. So why did you at this point decide that now's the time to revise the Getting Started book?
I didn't. My publisher did. So Wiley said, you know, the original was from 2000. And every 3-4 years, we did another edition. And Wiley decided now was a good time to do another one. You know, it's a zero unemployment economy. We've got people who are looking to start second careers. We have people retired from their first career. Sorry about my dogs here. Retired from their first careers. And we've got a lot of people who want to get out of the corporate lifestyle. So for all those kinds of reasons, Wiley decided it was a good time to relaunch it. And I'm glad they did.
Cool. I'm glad they did too. So if we think about getting started, I mean, so this is someone that's moving from corporate into the consultancy. So what would make a good candidate, Alan, to do that? I mean, can anybody just pull that trigger and make the move, or what do you think constitutes a good candidate for that?
Well, I think to be successful, you have to understand this is the marketing business. And there are a lot of excellent consultants, people with excellent consulting skills, who don't have very good practices because they don't know how to market. There are a lot of people with average consulting skills who market very well and they do fine. And then there are people with excellent consulting skills and excellent marketing skills and they do outstanding. So you have to resolve, you can't sit by the telephone. You can't wait for people to come to you. You know, this is, what is it? Build it and they will come from Field of Dreams. Well, that's false. Build it and then tell them you built it and then they will come. So it's all about marketing. If you're willing to do that, you've got a very good chance of doing very well.
Okay, so telling them that they did it though, but you said don't sit by the phone. That sounds almost like you're saying we have to sell it right after we build it. Do you see a distinction between selling and marketing, or are they the same? Marketing
is the creation of need, and selling is the providing of a product or service that meets the need. So they go hand in hand. And consequently, there's a lot of need out there for leadership, for strategy, you know, for organization stuff. But you have to show that you have the unique kind of offering that fills that need best. You also have to create need in those instances where clients know what they want but don't really know what they need. So a client says, we need a 2-day weekend leadership retreat. And you say, fine, it's $15,000. But the real question to ask is why? And the why question will get at the real objectives. And usually what the client wants is not an answer to what the client really needs.
That's interesting. So asking that why question, why don't more people ask the why question, Alan?
Because they're scared. They're scared of rejection. Their egos are fragile. They don't consider themselves a peer of the buyer. They're trying not to lose business instead of trying to win business. You know, if you take a look at the New England Patriots, they haven't won all those Super Bowls because they try not to lose. They try to win. And unfortunately, too many people get into a buyer's office and they get intimidated. And so your mental set, your esteem, your self-worth has to be that the buyer and I are peers, and I'm here to offer value. I'm not here to sell something. I'm here to offer value.
Okay. So if we're here to offer value, though, and we've never consulted before, what sort of results or proof do we have that we are that buyer's peer?
Well, if you've never consulted before, you're probably best off working with someone who is consulting, a boutique firm, intern for someone, not one of the big firms. You know, the last thing you want to do is work for McKinsey, even if they would have you. But you want to get some feel for what it's like. The second thing is that, in my book, $1 Million Coaching, I ask at the beginning, has anyone ever come to you for advice? Write down here who they were and what it was. And then I say, what advice did you give them? Write that here. And then I say, what was the outcome and did it work? And then you write that here. And I say, congratulations, you're a coach. And so places like these coaching universities have certifications and diplomas. It's a lot of garbage. Who certifies the certifiers, you know? And so you don't have to have consulted, but what you need is to know how to resolve problems. You need critical thinking skills. You know, you have to know what decision making is about, what innovation is about, and so on. And these are skills you learned on the job. These are skills you learned in your prior life. So all of us have quote unquote consulted in some way. It's just a question of codifying it so we could use it across a range of clients.
That makes sense. That makes sense. So we codify that and we get that clear. But you said it's marketing. So I need to put up a website and do a podcast. I need to have an email newsletter. What do you mean, Alan?
Well, actually, a website's the least of it. And social media is the least of it. And I'll tell you why. If you're talking about buyers, not people trolling the internet, true executive buyers. You mentioned Merck and Hewlett-Packard and so on before. You know, somebody like me has 100 buyers in those companies. They're people with budget who can invest in outside help. They don't troll the internet looking for help. They don't go on the internet and say, let me find a strategist. They ask their colleagues. And most of the purchasing done on executives, and the research on this has been consistent for 15 years, most people making those decisions ask for referrals from peers. And so they say, Phil, who did you use for strategy in your company? I'd like to meet them. Can you introduce me? A guy named Jonah Berger, who's at Wharton School and has done a lot of research. He wrote Contagion and Invisible Influence. I had him as my guest speaker at one of my consulting conventions, and he pointed out that over 80% of all purchasing is done by word of mouth, peer level reference, but only 4% of that is on the internet. So it's not a question of social media. Now, I'm not talking about retail business, selling a product to a consumer. I'm talking about corporate business. It's not on the internet. It's not on social media. And your website's merely a credibility statement. It's not a sales tool. So what does marketing mean? It means calling people and asking for referrals and introductions, not cold calling, but calling people to introduce you to other people. It means speaking at events. It means networking. It means publishing. And it means getting out into the public square. That's what you have to do to market. And if you're not willing to do that, if you're not comfortable doing that, then don't leave your day job.
That makes so much sense and is so simple. And yet I don't think that's why people leave their job. They feel they got bored, they tapped out, it's too much work, they weren't appreciated. But if they don't have any of those skills, they're not going to be successful as a consultant either. And they were just fortunate to have a 9-to-5 that didn't require those skills, or?
Well, first of all, in the organization world, most people don't leave organizations, they leave bosses. And so somebody complains and moans and groans and whines about their boss. Well, either do something about it, talk to the boss's superior, or get out. But stop whining about it. And if you do get out, have a plan. But don't stay there and be miserable. And don't assume you can just go out on your own. There are ways to do this with a methodology, with a systematic plan that will tend to make you more successful. But there is no barrier to entry in consulting. Anyone can hang out a shingle and say, I'm a consultant. But that's also the problem with it, in that people do that without a clue as to what they should be doing next.
Okay. So we start making those calls. We start asking for referrals. We get all that. What do we do with that, though, Alan? I mean, I gathered all that info, and now, I mean, is that where I set up my packages, or what's next?
You don't have packages. You're an advisor, and so you set up a meeting. You set up a meeting with what I call an economic buyer, and that's someone who can authorize a check for your value, and you develop a trusting relationship, and you look at the issues that are priorities for that buyer, and you demonstrate how you can help resolve them. You might be solving a problem, making a decision, creating something new, or just validating what that buyer already wants to do, which is also valuable. So it's based on a trusting relationship, and it's based on providing value to that buyer. That's why a consultant who charges by the day, or by the hour, by any time unit is an amateur.
Okay. So with an economic buyer, though, how do we demonstrate that value? I mean, where do we even go with that? Do they even know how we're going to measure that, Alan?
Well, you ask certain questions. Language is everything. You know, I have a book, an ebook called The Martial Arts of Language. And what you say is something like this. If I were meeting you and we were introduced by someone, I would say, Phil, what prompted you to spend the time with me today? Why did you do that? I hear what's on your mind. Now, you might say, well, it was a courtesy to my friend. And then I'd say, let me ask you a question I ask a lot of people. If the board of directors gave you $1 million, what would you do with it? And nobody says, I'd give it back. Right? So they say, I would fix this, I would build that, I would experiment with this, and now you know what their priorities are. And then you say, I can help you with that. Let me suggest some things you should be thinking about right now, right in the present. You're not consulting for free, you're providing value. So they can say, if I'm getting this much value sitting here with this person, what would I get if I actually hired them?
Okay. So that makes a lot of sense. So we're able to then listen to what's on their mind and then figure out inside there what part we fit. But what if nothing that they say fits, Alan? We need the business.
Phil, you're playing not to lose here.
Okay.
So you have to find something that makes sense. So for example, I never did anything in my entire career that was financial or technical. I have no interest in those two areas. I don't like finance. I don't like IT. I stay out of them. But I worked with maybe 40 different industries all over the world. Service, manufacturing, public, private, for-profit, nonprofit, all over the world. Now, how is that? Because we all have processes that apply no matter what. I can help people understand you can't solve a problem unless you know its cause. I can help people understand that a decision, you have to look at the objectives and the alternatives and risk. I can tell people that there are 3 different kinds of innovation, and so on and so forth. These are processes I can superimpose on any client. And most clients desperately need that because during the day, they're racing around putting out fires.
So we need to develop our process early on that helps people get that value, not just pull from the air and magically things happen.
That's right. For example, I know a woman whose company, 7-figure company, is adept at extracting costs from medical procedures. She can go into a hospital and tell them, you can save a few million dollars a year if you didn't have this kind of duplication or this kind of waste. I know somebody who can go into an organization and tell them that by contributing to charities, by being philanthropic, they'll actually increase their revenues, and so forth and so on. Those are their special processes.
Okay, well, that makes sense. And those are things that are developed over years of time. These aren't things that we just pulled out because we read one of your articles, right? These are actual areas of expertise.
Well, look, I'll say 2 things. The first is you don't learn to ski or ride a bike by reading a book, right? So you have to go and try these things. But the other I'll tell you is that going back to my coaching example, we've all done these things in our lives for ourselves, for our colleagues, for our companies. It's just a matter of taking them and then redistributing them to a new environment. So it's not like we walk out there never having consulted.
That makes sense. Okay. So we're exchanging value for value here. That's one of the key things you talk about. I'm going to help you save money, make more money. We're going to do that. And in return, you're going to pay that. So how do we set that fee then, Al? Is it just a pure percentage, or where do we come up with that?
Well, I believe you set fees based on value. And so I pioneered value-based fees in the consulting profession. And I have a couple of books called Value-Based Fees and How to Maximize Fees. And the point is, I never wanted to charge by the head or time unit ever again. So you take a look at what the project is worth, the completion of the project is worth to the client, and you get the client, the buyer, to tell you that. So you look at the objectives, which are the business outcomes from the project. You look at metrics, which is how you measure progress in the project. And then you look at the value derived. So for example, profit seems to be an objective, but also seems to be value. But if you increase profit, you can pay down debt, you can increase bonuses, you can hire new people, you can expand the facilities. All these are impacts from profit. Once you delineate that, you charge a fee based on your contribution, and I recommend a 10-to-1 return. So if you're improving the operation by $2 million, $200,000 in fee is reasonable. Nobody gets a 10-to-1 return on their investments. That's very reasonable.
It does sound reasonable.
It is.
When you say it that way. Yeah, 10-to-1 makes sense. So you mentioned that you didn't choose to, I guess, revise this book, but many of your books are self-published. How do you decide which project to take on and which to pass on?
Well, if you look at my multiple editions and foreign editions, they're in 15 languages. That comes to 64 books. So about 50 of them are first-time works, and only 5 of the 50 are self-published. So, that's what's 10%. And I decided to publish those 5 because publishers weren't interested, but I felt they were important books. So I published Thrive, and I published Alan Weiss on Consulting, and How to Break Through Writer's Block because publishers didn't see a large enough audience, but I saw a very specialized audience. I wanted to get them out.
Okay. Okay. So that makes sense. So you're podcasting now. I listen to your podcast. It's short, sweet, and to the point, and very direct, much like you are. And why podcast, Alan? What are you seeing in podcasting that's helping your business?
Well, I do a weekly podcast called The Uncomfortable Truth. It's free. And you're right. They range from, probably 8 to 10 minutes. Sometimes I go a little bit longer. And I started podcasting, I don't know how long ago, because I feel that somebody who wants to be an object of interest and is a thought leader needs to be in all media. And podcasts are very popular. People like to listen to them while they're running or jogging or driving or whatever it is. And so they can be on a mobile device. Some people learn best just by an auditory means. And I find you can express things that way, just as you can do things in video that you can't do just in text. So I like a short podcast, but I like also the consistency of having one out there every week. The most popular thing I do is text. It's the Monday Morning Memo, which is just about a paragraph or 2 every Monday morning, obviously. And I've been doing that for, 12 years. And it's it gets probably the most response of anything I do.
And where can we sign up for that Monday Morning Memo, Alan? Is that clients only, or is that available for everybody?
So it's free for anybody. AlanWeiss.com. On the homepage, there's a subscription area. And you can get Monday Morning Memo. You can get Balancing Act, $1 Million Mindset, and so forth. And also, if you go to my blog regularly, once a month, there's a video, Writing on the Wall, which is free. And every Friday, there's a cartoon, The Adventures of Koufax and Buddy Beagle.
The Adventures of Your Dogs that we heard earlier today. That's fantastic. So, Alan, I saw you a few months ago at NSA down in South Florida. And one of the things that you said that really stuck with me was about having, kind of the Bentley card, right? The high-end card that people can buy some of your work or time with you. Can you explain that a little bit? Because that was a really fascinating way to trade value.
Well, about, 7 or 8 years ago, I started these credit cards in my community. So a Bentley card is $20,000, but you get $30,000 of credits that you can spend on my events, because I run high-end events all over the world, or you could spend it on my subscriptions and so forth. So that's the Bentley card. And I introduced the Buddy card and the Allen card, and I have a Rolls card, which is $100,000, and you get in to all of my events for free for 5 years. And I've sold 6 Rolls cards, to give an example. I have a Unicorn card, which is you can go to all of my events for free, and I get 10% of your revenue throughout the year. So I have all these different ways of working with me. And the cards alone are $2 million revenue on them.
Wow. That's awesome. So, Alan, the book is about getting started in consulting. You mentioned some basics there, but what are some other basics or some fundamentals that help folks before they go and get a copy of your book that'll help with their mindset and maybe get started?
Well, you know about people who already decided to go into consulting? They're trying to decide. Just tell me what you want me to answer, because if you're trying to get into consulting, if you're thinking about it, you need to think about the fact you're not going to have resources that you did in the corporate world, that you're going to have to make your own copies and go to the post office yourself and things like that. You're going to need a support system. Ideally, it's your spouse, your partner, and your family. But if you don't have that, then you can use colleagues or friends and so on. But if your partner is not supportive of this, you're going to have a rough time. There are 2 parts of this business that are important: the relationship and the financial, and they're entwined. So you have to have about 6 months of money in the bank for your normal expenses, just in case. I think in 6 months you should be able to make your first sale, maybe sooner. In a year, you should be able to support yourself in the style to which you become accustomed. But you have to face the fact you're going to be on your own, and you have to face the fact there'll be a lot of rejection. This job, like life, is about rejection, and you can't let your ego be damaged every time someone says no. So those are the conditions for your personality, for your behavior that you have to think about. Once you go into it, don't make all the wrong turns. I've been doing this for over 30 years. I've never had an office. I'm sitting in my den here in my home. I saved about Well, at one point we checked, I saved about $450 or $500,000 by not having an office, rent, utilities, part-time staff, insurance. And $450,000 was exactly what it cost to send my two kids through undergraduate school. So you want to make sure you're lean and mean, and that what you make is what you keep.
Wow, that's great. So you mentioned colleagues. Do you recommend joining like some association or something that's going to help us get connected to colleagues? Or do you mean colleagues like more like where, somebody pick up the phone and call someone, or what do you mean?
Well, I'd recommend you get into a community. So I run these coaching and mentoring communities. They're all over the globe, and you can participate a little bit or a lot. You can go to events, or you can just be on my site. There's alansforums.com, which is part of my community, which you get in for free if you participate in other things, or for $500, you're in there for life. There's the Society for Advancement of Consulting, which is run by two women out of California. I'm going to be speaking there later this week. And they run a global community of consultants, and they have articles and meetings and so forth. There's the Institute of Management Consultants, where I'll be speaking in October at their annual event. So these are some things you have to choose from, but you have to make sure that the people you're with challenge you. You have to make sure that they're not a bunch of people sitting around giving you bad advice, because a lot of people commiserate, and they get together and tell each other they're doing well when they're not. I think most conventions, you talk about the National Speakers Association before. I have a lot of friends, and I've been a member since '86. But I think conventions are usually a case where people come together and lie about how well they're doing,
Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Unfortunately, that's true, but that's funny. So Alan, how do you stay sharp? How do you stay on top of the game and stay ahead of the curve so that you can serve your clients better? I know that you have tons of experiences, obviously, with the clients you consult with, but how else do you fill your head?
Well, my wife and I travel the world, and I'm in a position where if I want to go somewhere, I can attract people. So we just went to Turks and Caicos and cleared our heads, just vegetating on the beach in our little private place. But we're off to San Francisco tomorrow. Then in 2 weeks is my convention in Washington. Then we go to Sicily. Later in the year, we go to Dubrovnik. And then after that, we go to Vietnam. And that's not counting our trips to the Jersey Shore and Nantucket and so forth. So we'd love to travel together for both business and personal reasons. I read vociferously. And I'm never without a book. Seldom a business book, seldom ever. I write all the time. I have a lot of columns and so forth. And I have a large coaching community. So during the day, I'm talking to 3 or 4 people somewhere in the world and giving them advice on what they're doing. And I have a whole lot of hobbies. So, the more active you are, the sharper you are. And, as you get older and the horizon gets closer, you don't slow up, you speed up. People have to think of this differently. So when the horizon gets closer, you don't say, well, I'm going to tend my garden. Who the hell wants to tend a garden? I mean, that's a half an hour a day, please. You want to speed up and get things done.
So seldom a business book, though, Alan. I explain that. I'm shocked by that.
Sure. Most business books are crap. Most business books are written by academics who have no idea what they're talking about. Now, if you want to talk about a psychology book, you want to talk about a book on sociology, you want to talk about a book on positive self-talk and so forth, they're great. Jonah Berger I mentioned, Marty Seligman I mentioned, people like that. Seth Godin writes great books on creativity, Marcus Buckingham stuff. But if you read most business books telling you how business should be organized and run and what's important, they don't know what they're talking about. This is all academic nonsense. And if you get into a business, you realize it doesn't work that way. Good point.
So when I saw you down in Fort Lauderdale, you also mentioned you read the Wall Street and Economist and what other publications do you read daily?
I don't read the Economist. I read the Wall Street Journal every day.
Okay.
I can get it anywhere in the world, and if it's late, I read it late. I mean, I'll come home and read 3 past editions, but you need to read that if you're going to be an intelligent object of interest. Period. I read the New York Times on Sunday, which I don't spend as much time with as I used to because it leans so far left it really falls flat on the floor. It's really too bad, but it does have some good stuff in it. And then I read the local newspaper wherever I am to pick up, what's going on. So if I'm home, I read this newspaper. If I'm in, Miami, I'll read that newspaper, the Miami Herald. So those are the kinds of things I read besides fiction and nonfiction books. And I read magazines that are pertinent to my hobbies. And that's it.
Great. So any last advice, Alan, maybe questions I should have asked you that you want to answer, anything else you'd like to share?
I never know how to answer that question, but I'll say this to the viewers. Consulting is a great profession. is going to be more in need than ever because companies don't have the residual talent they used to. Human resources is laughable these days, you know. And that people need to look outside for help, and they want people who can come in quickly, like a stiletto, and fix things or improve things and leave. They don't want McKinsey descending with 300 people spending 6 months to learn their business. So it's like mammals among the dinosaurs. It's great to be a consultant, but you have to get serious and understand it's the marketing game. And if you do that, you'll have a great life. If you can't do that, then I suggest you look elsewhere.
Excellent. Excellent. So folks, go to alanweiss.com, spelled like you might expect, ALANWEISS.com. Pick up his newsletter, read it, listen to his podcast. And then his new book is coming soon, Getting Started in Consulting, 4th edition, coming out on April 2nd. Hope you get a copy of that. Alan, thank you so much for making time for us today. This was really helpful for me, and I know for a lot of people. So thanks,
you. I appreciate it.
My pleasure.